Hey everybody, Sean from Media Assault here, and it's finally time to do my overdue double feature review that you picked the films for on Facebook. So you guys picked, out of the 8 choices that I had, you picked Lincoln and Alien, and this is the Alien anthology. And because this is all 4 of the movies all packaged together, I'll do this once. It's Alien. Otherwise, I'm just going to hold this box set up and pretend it's just for Alien. And this was kind of an interesting pairing. Of course, we've got a historical drama biography of Abraham Lincoln, which was directed by Steven Spielberg. And I was actually really looking forward to seeing this in the theaters, and one thing led to another, and I just didn't. And I waited so long, I figured, what the hell, I'll just wait till it comes out on Blu-ray to finally watch it. Steven Spielberg is one of my, if not my favorite director. And I don't think he's made anything that I haven't liked at least something about, other than 1941. And even that kind of has a soft spot in my heart, just because it's a movie that I went to when I was really young at the theater. Or I went to see at the theater when I was really young. So the only kind of hesitation I had about this is that I thought it might end up being kind of dry, kind of boring, because it's a movie about politics, and it's a movie about 1865 politics, and, there's a lot of potential for that to be, not so entertaining. But in the hands of Spielberg and in the masterful performance of Daniel Day-Lewis as Abraham Lincoln, this is a positively entertaining movie. And you wouldn't think that a movie about the passage of a constitutional amendment and sort of the backroom politics of how Lincoln and the Republican Party kind of manipulated the strings, I guess, to get this thing passed, and all the different ramifications of doing one strategy versus another. It actually is very interesting, and it's easy to follow, which, if somebody said, oh, I'm going to show you a biographical drama about 1865 politics, and, enjoy. It's probably not going to sound that interesting, but it is very good. It held my attention for the entire running time, which is about 2.5 hours. And that, in and of itself, says a lot. The performances, other than Daniel Day-Lewis, who is spectacular and totally deserved the Academy Award, you got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's in it, and he's okay in it. He doesn't really bring too much to the table, but Sally Field is fantastic. Tommy Lee Jones is great, and I thought in the trailers, because I wasn't really sure who he was playing, I thought he was actually going to be an adversary, facing off against Lincoln, and it turns out he's an ally. But he's got plenty of adversaries, and the adversaries are very well played, and I don't know who the actual guy is that leads sort of the opposition on the Democratic Party, but just a really, really cool movie all the way around. So I highly recommend Lincoln. I did get the 1-disc, or this is actually the 2-disc combo pack. It has the DVD and the Blu-ray. I believe there's another version that has more special features than this. This does not have too many special features, so if you're really interested in this movie and you've already seen it and you want a lot of special features, pay about $5 more and get the one that has the gold border around it. I would say that's probably a much better value. So that's Lincoln. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it, and I think you will too. If you have any interest whatsoever in history, see it. I love history, but again, I'm not much of a politics person, but I still enjoyed it. The second movie, of course, is 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. And I remember when this came out in the theater, I was too young to see rated R movies, but I was really interested in seeing Alien. So I did the next best thing, which is what I typically would do when a rated R movie would come out and I couldn't see it. I would go buy the novelization. And I just remember the novelization of this film was written by Alan Dean Foster, who at the time wrote a lot of movie novelizations. And I didn't get very far in the book at all. But then the movie ended up being on HBO, I think, like a year or so after it came out in the theater, so I finally got to see it. I've seen it 3 or 4 times since, and then a bunch of other times where I've seen bits and pieces of it on TV, whether it be commercial TV or cable. And This was the first time I've sat down to watch the 2003 director's cut. And it had been a long time, probably about 10 years since I've last sat down and watched the original Alien, the theatrical cut, from beginning to end. So, I kind of have some gaps in my memory as to what, the entire running time of the film is like. But I noticed on the director's cut that the end just seemed a little more dragged out, a little more extended, I guess, and the pacing kind of fell apart at the end. I think the original, at least from my memory, the original ending was a little more taut and a little more just dynamic in terms of pacing. This was longer and there was more to it, but I don't think it was necessary. At least that's my memory of it. I didn't actually sit down and research the differences between the director's cut and the theatrical cut, other than I know he shaved some seconds off some scenes and added more in other scenes. The running time is only like a minute difference. So some things were canned, some things were added, but I think a lot of the additions came at the end, if my memory is correct. But of course, this is the film that launched the Alien franchise, where we get the xenomorph creature, which terrorizes the crew of the Nostromo. It's a very, very well-directed film. One of the things that I noticed about it, though, other than the camera work, which is spectacular, the camera work in this is just absolutely phenomenal, was the music. The score, I think it's by Jerry Goldsmith, it just has an odd reverence for the fact that all the space scenes, the outer space viewpoints, and some of the shots of the ships and stuff, and some of the inner shots, they just sort of have this sort of reverent, sort of majestical, I guess, maybe that's a bad word, but or not bad, like, bad, but just not quite the word I want. But it's the type of soundtrack that you don't hear in science fiction films anymore. Sort of an awe-filled soundtrack for the space stuff, like the accomplishment of what humans have done in space. Of course, there are menacing and brooding and dark parts in the music when the action gets a little rough and tumble towards the end. But I really liked the music towards the beginning. It just struck me as very much of its time, but yet really cool for now. If this movie were made now, I think the soundtrack would be completely different, and I don't think it would work as well as what Jerry Goldsmith did with the 1979 soundtrack, which I don't think was altered at all for the director's cut. So if I had to rate Alien, the director's cut, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think I liked the original theatrical cut better, but it's not exactly fresh in my mind, so I actually want to revisit that. But watching the original Alien, I saw so many things that were influential to films of today, just different camera things and pacing and just a lot of stuff that I really can't explain. They're more visual, and I won't do them justice by rambling about them, but just a very influential film. Of course, it was influenced by there's a 1950s horror film whose name escapes me. I think it's called It, The Terror from Beyond Space, which was a very similar setup where a creature was on board a spaceship while it was in space. And so this sort of has a reverence for the 1950s creature feature, but it's very modern, and it still stands up pretty well today. The only thing that's kind of odd about it, I guess, is the fact that the technology of the future looks really dated by today's standards. So, and that's typically the case with the late 70s, early 80s science fiction films that, thought they knew where we were going to be, and they're still using, tube TVs for computer monitors, but, what are you going to do? But 8.5 for Alien. I really think that if you like science fiction movies and horror movies, it's probably one of the best mixtures of the two genres. A better example does not come to mind immediately. If you have a better science fiction horror film, please post it in the comments below. I'd love to either agree with you or disagree with you, or check that film out if I haven't seen it. But there you go. Those are my reviews of Lincoln and Alien, as chosen by you on my Facebook page. I am going to suspend the double feature reviews for the month of April because I want to start my Schlock Cinema series for April. And the first film that I'm going to review will be Octoman, which is notable for being the first movie that had makeup done by Rick Baker, who would eventually go forward and win an Academy Award for American Werewolf in London, still does work on the Men in Black films, and many, many other things. So stay tuned for that. I should probably have the Octoman review up sometime next week. Otherwise, as always, feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and take it easy.